Welcome back to the Cabin Podcast. I'm Andrea Belke.
And I'm Megan Christian.
The Cabin is brought to you by the Wisconsin Counties Association and Something Special from Wisconsin. And today I'm really excited because I'm a huge animal lover. You're an animal lover too.
Oh, yeah.
We have Julia Robson in the cabin. She's a conservation biologist at the Waukesha County Parks and Land Use. Nice to see you, Julia.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me.
You can't forget our other special guest.
Okay, who's our other special guest?
Okay, we have Olive, the box turtle here, guys.
Yes.
Look at her.
If
If you're just listening, you're going to have to go to YouTube because she's just adorable and she is on the move.
Yeah. If you're just doing audio, you're just going to have to imagine the cutest turtle you've ever seen sitting right next to Julia.
My co-star.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you. So I've met you before doing different TV stuff, and I was always so fascinated by your work. Can you kind of explain maybe the day-to-day of what you do as a biologist?
Yeah, that's like a hard question to answer because it varies so much, and I think that's why I fell in love with the field. But I've been practicing in conservation biology for about 15 years now. And in general, a conservation biologist, at the core of it, it's all about protecting and preserving biodiversity, right? We know that landscapes that are biodiverse, they're more resilient to change or stresses like climate change. And they ultimately provide us with more benefits too, cleaner water, cleaner air. So on a day-to-day, a lot of that can involve research. So we monitor wildlife populations in our local ecosystems. We steward and maintain the habitat that wildlife need in our green spaces. And that's not just where it ends either. It's super interdisciplinary in a sense. Like we'll be working on policy and planning, environmental education as well. So one day I might be in Nomex doing a prescribed burn, and then the next, you might be in a blazer presenting to the county board on the importance of the work we're doing or teaching school kids. So it varies from day to day.
Right. How did you first get into all of this?
Over the years, I've thought a lot about that question. I have always loved being outdoors. I think a big part of it came from my parents just having us. We were always put outside to play and encouraged to be curious, right? Like get a little bit dirty, like pick up the critter, a frog and or a turtle, and just ask questions about it. So I've always known I wanted to go into working with wildlife in some way, shape, or form. I took the route like pre-vet at first, but it didn't like fulfill me as much as the idea about working in more wild spaces with wildlife.
Yeah. So you work primarily in southeastern Wisconsin. Are you from Wisconsin originally then?
Not originally. Our family we all moved up from Florida. I was born and raised in the early years in Miami, and then we moved up to Wisconsin like towards the end of grade school, basically into early high school. So moved up from Florida and then spent most of my like young life up here. And I remember distinctly moving up to Wisconsin was such a cool thing for my brothers and I, because we had this undeveloped like vacant lot of woods next to the house, and I think then was when I really
Olive's on the run
when I really kind of we got into the woods and we got to just explore a lot more. We had nature like all around us, and that was really key to I think furthering my interest in working outdoors.
Yeah. I'm curious, Megan, were you out in the woods when you were younger?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My grandparents, like their entire backyard is woods. But also when I was little, so I lived in Johnson Creek for a good chunk of my life. And there was a creek like in my neighborhood. So we would go catch little baby turtles. I remember bringing like 3 little like penny-sized ones home at one point. Stunk up the entire house. My parents were so mad. But yeah, I was an outdoor girly.
It was the best. I feel like growing up, especially in Wisconsin, and getting to be outside there's nothing like it. I mean, we always like caught frogs. Like I always loved.
Or maybe it was
frogs.
frogs. It was frogs that I caught, not baby turtles. Yeah.
I was like, wow, have you caught little baby turtles there?
No, little baby frogs. That's what they were. And they smelled horrible.
I used to rescue these little lizards, Cuban anoles, from our pool in Florida, and that was like my chore of the house, was to go out. I'd get allowance if I'd go, and I'd get the critters that maybe made their way into the pool. But everybody I feel like that appreciates the outdoors, or especially works in this field, kind of has like an origin story like that, and so much of it draws back to childhood, and whether or not you were encouraged to form those connections or you just happened upon them on your own, like that's key. It kind of creates this lifelong steward in yourself or just an advocate for things in the natural world.
I'm kind of curious, did you have like any interesting pets growing up? Like, did you have turtles?
I had a snake named Zeppelin for a while. So I had a corn snake. Zeppelin, yeah. I was a big Led Zeppelin fan. Still am. So, no, but I was always allowed to. Mom would let us kind of foster if we ever found any, like an injured animal or usually it was something injured maybe in the backyard, I remember as a kid. And she would let us try to take care of it sometimes. And at some points we'd take it to a rehabilitation center. But no other like really interesting pets. But I kind of grew up around interesting wildlife in a sense in Florida a little bit. But I think a snake was probably the most interesting thing that I had. I did foster a parrot for a little bit.
Ooh. Did it talk?
No, he didn't. He didn't like me either. So it was just like I invested so much love into this bird. He did not. He didn't appreciate me. He was at the end of his years, and sadly, someone else gave him up, and then I took him in. But he was so attached to the person before me that he just wasn't very happy with me.
So not all parrots talk, or do they?
No, well, they mimic is the thing, but
he did mimic a lot of sounds, like the microwave. And I was living in downtown.
Oh,
Milwaukee
not the
at
microwave. That would be so annoying.
I know.
I kind of love watching parrot videos because sometimes, like, if they're in a house with someone who's like swearing like a sailor, they just repeat it, and it's so funny. It'll be like around kids. For those of you who are just listening, Olive is on an adventure right now, completely sideways on the couch.
She's doing yoga.
She's completely sideways.
I'm gonna give her an assist over here.
Yeah, we might need to bring her back on track. Well, let's talk about Olive. Let's talk about turtles. So this is coming out end of June, right? So I'm kind of curious. I know turtles are sort of they're laying their eggs now, right?
They're just about to get started. I haven't seen any egg laying yet, but we're in that perfect window when it comes to turtle ecology. They're May through June into July, the females will be looking for places to lay their eggs. And this also kind of happens to be, because of that reason, the time of year that people see them most often, particularly on the sides of roads or trying to cross roads, because those nice, sunny, gravelly roadside shoulders are, unfortunately, a really prime nesting real estate sometimes. So females are drawn to roads for that reason. So it's timely to be talking about turtles.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's because it's soft, it's the gravel. So they find that. It always makes me worried.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
really
rightfully
does.
so. I mean, that is, aside from just loss of habitat in general, just the road mortalities for turtles, particularly those females, because the males aren't ones out searching to nest on the sides of the roads.
Of course, where are they? Not putting themselves in danger.
Nowhere to be seen.
So they're very prone, all of these species, that especially in urban and semi-urban areas, whether they're crossing the road to get to a different wetland or if they're looking to nest on those roadside shoulders, are extremely prone to road mortality. And so a lot of that mortality is skewed towards females. And the problem with that is, from a turtle population standpoint, these turtles take years to become sexually mature so that they could contribute to population sizes on a large scale. So when you have a female turtle on the side of the road or crossing the road that gets struck, that's an individual that took 18 to 20 years in some species to reach maturity to be able to lay eggs. And then that individual is removed from the population on a large scale. That can be really catastrophic for turtle populations in the region. So road mortality is a big deal in turtle conservation.
Yeah, and turtles, they live to be pretty old, right? How old is Olive? Like here,
Cover your ears, Olive.
Miss Olive is 39 years young.
Okay. And so I'm sure each breed is different. But
Yeah. So it varies depending on species. And so ornate box turtles, which is the species that Olive is in captivity, I think they've been noted to live upwards of 100. You could get them up that age.
Oh.
In the wild, obviously, that's significantly less when they don't have food provided to them and the protection provided to them in captivity. But she could easily get upwards of that age as well. But in the wild, depending on the species, there's a lot of predation pressure that turtles face. So, things like raccoons can get at them and kill them. And then obviously that roads are a big issue as well, and collections
Yeah.
too. People, unfortunately, especially during the nesting season when they're obvious on the side of the road, people collecting turtles as pets is unfortunately a contributing factor to population decline. Not as much as some of these other things, but that's how Olive came to be in our care at Retzer Nature Center. She was someone's pet that they had collected from the wild in Illinois. She was brought in to a vet for health issues, and then they realized, oh, this is an endangered ornate box turtle. You can't have this as a pet. Because of some of the health issues she faced. She's got kind of a malformed shell here. It's not as domed as it should be. She wasn't given the right nutrients she needed that she would have found herself in the wild when she was young and growing. So she couldn't be rehabilitated or released. So she came to Retzer Nature Center to then kind of be used as a teaching animal.
Well, don't worry, Olive. You're in Wisconsin now. Yeah. Saved you from the
She says
fibs.
go Petco.
Wait, so is that, I mean, I didn't even know people were doing that. So people are
Yeah.
catching wild turtles and making them pets.
Yeah. And I think people, when they do that, they don't realize how long some of these animals can live too. And then you see them re-release them into areas that are well outside their range. So I've seen this particularly in Milwaukee County. We found when I was working there, a wood turtle, which is a threatened species in the state. You find them further north. We found it in the Menominee River Valley, and it was obviously somebody had went up north for a weekend, captured this wood turtle, brought it home, and then realized I can't take care of this thing, or it lived longer than I thought it would, and they just released it. So you do see that. You do see that happen, and particularly this time of year when turtles are very obvious and they're out of those wetlands and kind of on the side of the road, easy to pick up in a sense.
Wait, that makes me so sad.
Yeah, that is really sad, actually.
I wouldn't even think of just grabbing a wild turtle and keeping it.
No, I'm glad I remembered that it was frogs that I collected. Well, before we get into it was frogs. It was definitely frogs. My mom will vouch for me. Before we get into Wisconsin wildlife, if I see a turtle on the side of the road, how can I safely pick it up and place it in a safe area?
That's a great question. So if the turtle's actively nesting already, so if she looks like she's kind of dug out a hole and backed her rear end into it, you're best off to leave that turtle be, because she's going to be determined to kind of lay eggs no matter what. If you find a turtle crossing the road, and you can safely pull over and kind of escort them across the road, you definitely can and should do that in those situations where it's safe for you to do so. The key is always putting them in the direction that they were heading, because again, they're determined. They're just going to go turn right back around across the road again. Most of our turtle species are relatively easy to handle. I think the one that people are most concerned about coming across is our common snapping turtle. They've got a much different disposition than Miss Olive does here. And even those turtles you can safely assist by just kind of, Olive, we're going to pretend you are a snapping turtle, but I'm grabbing the back hinges of her shell here on the rear end. You can do the same thing with the snapping turtle and just kind of gently drag it across the road. You don't want to grab the tail of any turtles. Their tails, the vertebrae in the tail are fused to the top of the carapace here. So with something as heavy as a snapping turtle, if you're pulling it up just by the tail, you can do a lot of damage to their spine, essentially. So either just grabbing the back hinge of the back of the top of the shell, the carapace, and pulling them across in the direction they were heading. I've seen people get really creative with, and I've never seen it really work, where they try to stick an object in the snapping turtle's mouth and drag it across. They tend to snap versus grab out and latch. They can, but it's usually not the most effective way to get them across the road. But
yeah, this is where I would insert "Why did the turtle cross the road?" jokes. I don't have any. Nick, do you have any?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're not prepared. I'm sure everyone says that, right?
No, I'm surprised I'm not. But I need to have an answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, you just have a very scientific, they actually are laying their eggs, and they
Well, they actually are very determined, so they need to cross the road.
Yeah.
You will not.
And
be
then how many eggs are they?
Andrea, look, it's 4.
How many eggs are they laying?
That too will vary depending on species. So ornate box turtles, they'll lay anywhere from 4 to 6, which is a really small clutch size. Snapping turtles, you're upwards of 50 to 60 eggs. And a lot of those, unfortunately, get what we call depredated. So predators, mesopredators like raccoons, fox, coyotes, possums, they'll get in there almost right away sometimes and consume a lot of the eggs. In nests, so that in semi-urban areas can be for those turtle populations yet another kind of hurdle that they have to overcome because we have higher populations of those nest predators. So it depends on the species how many eggs that you'll get per clutch.
I'm sure it depends on species, but on average, would you say for Wisconsin turtles, from the time the egg is laid to the time they hatch, what is that kind of looking like for time span?
It depends on weather, honestly, more than species. So the development of those eggs, it's very much temperature dependent. So if we have a really cold, rainy, drawn out summer, that's going to be longer than if it's a warm, that nest is warm. But on average, between 50 to 60 days, maybe a bit longer. Okay. So usually they'll start egg laying around this time towards July, and then you'll get hatching in August and September. If that hatching's delayed, a lot of species or several species that they can hatch within that nest, and they may actually overwinter in the nest. So in the spring, if you've ever found those little like quarter-sized turtles, painted turtles or snapping turtles, those are young that would have hatched in the nest the fall prior, overwintered in the nest. They produce like a glycol-like substance in their blood. It kind of acts like an antifreeze, so their cells don't get damaged. They will literally overwinter and basically freeze in those nests, and then they will emerge the following spring. So if you ever find a really, really small turtle early in the spring, it's not that it already hatched from an egg. It was a turtle that was born last year, overwintered in the nest, and it's now just making its way to the water.
Wait, living things are so cool.
I know, right?
So cool.
The other interesting
really
thing
cool.
that I just love about that I wanted to throw out there, because we're talking like temperature and egg development, is a lot of people don't realize that the sex determination in a lot of our turtles, whether they're born a male or a female, is actually temperature dependent. It's not genetically predetermined in a lot of our turtles, except for the wood turtle. But so what that means is there's a point when those eggs are developing in the nest that if it's a certain temperature, so if it's warmer, in our case, those eggs will mostly result in female turtles. A little bit cooler, it'll be males, and then if it's within the middle of that range, you can get a mixed ratio within the nest. So that's something that when we think about factors like climate change and other things, with turtle populations, we could even see shifting demographics even between males and females within populations. There's nothing that I'm aware of yet that we're seeing that's super concerning, but it's just a kind of an interesting thing to think about and wonder how that'll play out.
That's fascinating. Okay, so if it's warmer temperatures, more females. Like the whole nest could be females.
It could be, yeah.
Is that for all reptiles or just turtles?
I know it's for sure with turtles. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case across all reptiles, though. I could see that being the case.
That's really interesting.
Wow. The Cabin is brought to you by the Wisconsin Counties Association, and this week we are featuring Eau Claire County. Eau Claire County was founded back in 1856 and has grown from a lumber town to a vibrant cultural hotspot. Nestled along the Chippewa River, it's home to scenic trails, lush parks, and a thriving art scene. If you're a music lover, there is a lot for you to explore in Eau Claire County, especially in Eau Claire itself, which is the birthplace of Grammy winner Justin Vernon of Bon Iver. There are many music festivals and live music throughout the city. You also have the Pablo Center at the Confluence, which hosts everything from theater to art exhibits. And outdoor enthusiasts also have a lot to take advantage of in the county. With hundreds of miles of biking, hiking, and kayaking routes, you'll never run out of things to do, especially along the beautiful Chippewa River State Trail. Fun fact, Eau Claire means clear water in French and took its name from the Eau Claire River. To plan your visit today, head to wicounties.org.
Calling all food lovers, craft enthusiasts, and supporters of all things local. Are you ready to discover the treasure trove of Wisconsin's finest products? Introducing Something Special from Wisconsin, where nearly 500 members bring you a smorgasbord of delights from every corner of our great state. Explore an A to Z wonderland of Wisconsin-made goods, from artisan and craft creations that showcase our state's best incredible talent to bakeries that'll make your taste buds dance with joy. Craving something savory? The cheese and dairy category is a cheese lover's paradise. And don't forget to check out the meat and seafood offerings for that perfect protein fix. Thirsty? Dive into the beverage section, featuring everything from craft sodas to locally brewed beers. And for those with a sweet tooth, the candy and confectionery category is sure to satisfy. But wait, there's more. Explore fruit and vegetable producers, honey makers, and maple syrup crafters. Looking for unique gifts? The gift and novelty category has you covered. From furniture and wood products to bath and body items, Something Special from Wisconsin truly has it all. And with categories like tourism and specialty retailer, they're not just about products, they're about experiences. And here's the best part. If you want to connect with any of the amazing members, simply click Contact Us on somethingspecialwi.com. You can reach out directly to multiple producers at once, making it easier to find exactly what you need. Remember, when you support Something Special from Wisconsin members, you're supporting local businesses. Okay, well, I do want to jump into Wisconsin wildlife a little bit, just because it's kind of like the whole point. But what makes Wisconsin wildlife so unique and special?
I love Wisconsin for a multitude of reasons. And when you're an ecologist, it's kind of like being a kid in a candy store. What makes Wisconsin unique really comes down to more so the landscapes that we have versus the species. And I say that because in Wisconsin, we've got this, have you ever heard of the ecological tension zone? Okay.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was nodding yes, but I haven't.
Andrew just
It was
lied.
very convincing. I was like, okay.
It's like, yes, of course I have.
She's like, I don't know why I just did that.
Oh, that was funny.
So no, we don't know what it is.
We don't know.
Well, it's not an area that you cross in the state where you all of a sudden get a headache or anything like that. It's actually this really interesting section within the state, and it's across the Midwest where Olive is now doing push-ups on the back of the couch,
Yes.
basically. And in case she climbs over, I'm going to just...
She's
Yeah,
a little
that's fine.
camera shy, maybe.
Come back on the lap. So Wisconsin has something that runs across it called the ecological tension zone, and it's this blending of two major ecotypes within the region. So you have, I mean, think about when you drive from southern Wisconsin up north, you can almost notice a change in the way even just the forest looks.
Yep.
You're like, oh, I'm in the North Woods now, right?
Yep.
So northern Wisconsin is a bunch of coniferous mixed forest, and then in southern and western Wisconsin we get more broadleaf forests, more prairies and oak savannas, and then from like Burnett County all the way down to Racine in like an S-curved shape across the state, those two regions mix, right? So I say Wisconsin is just awesome for wildlife because you have such a diverse array of landscape types in this state that essentially support an equally diverse amount of wildlife. So I think that alone makes Wisconsin wildlife super fascinating because you can get species that are, dependent on these vastly open prairie ecosystems, such as, ornate box turtles like this. And then you get further north and you get some of our larger megafauna like elk, wolves, bears. So there's just a wide variety of species, and it's all because of the diverse landscapes we have.
Yes. And I'm like, you're saying a lot of things that I'm like, okay, I want to hit on all of this because you mentioned some of the big ones that we've been kind of talking about recently of just, there's a lot of animals in Wisconsin I haven't seen yet. I have not seen a bear in Wisconsin. I haven't seen an elk in Wisconsin. Can you kind of talk about, I know you worked with wolves for a while.
I did. This is the thing with ecologists too. We like to dabble in everything. So for about 6 years, I did a bunch of voluntary tracking of gray wolves in the winter for the Wisconsin DNR, and then got to do some trapping and telemetry work and tracking of wolves as well in the summer months. So
yeah. So because I feel like wolves, they weren't here for a bit, right?
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. So, wolves were noted as being like extirpated or just gone from Wisconsin by the 60s, basically, due to, essentially because they were hunted out of the state. And then by the 70s, they had started to make their way back in on their own from Minnesota. So they weren't reintroduced within the state. And really, within a human lifetime, now we've got, I think the last report I saw, it was well over 1,000 individual gray wolves within the state, and over 200 individual packs within the state. So that's a great example of species recovery for sure within the state.
Wow.
Well, I do have a question. So it could be one of those internet things, but I saw that a state, I think it was Colorado or Wyoming, they introduced a wolf population or increased it, and it changed the natural landscape. Is that something that actually is an accurate thing because they were saying it would start tracking. They would stalk bison, and the bison would stop down the grass, and then that would dictate where the river flowed. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Aldo Leopold, who you may have heard of, he did a lot of research early on into game management, and really was one of the first ecologists to come out and say how important predators were in balancing ecosystems. And part of that is definitely influencing how prey items, so larger ungulates, utilize the landscape, and what that does to the vegetation within some of these ecosystems, and even how other species are interacting in those systems. I think that was that example part of a Yellowstone study out of Yellowstone, maybe, because I know beaver were even part of that as well. And it can change a landscape when you remove predators completely. I mean, what they saw is, you can see deer and elk and some of those other ungulate species almost eat themselves out of house and home in some situations too. So there's an interesting balance in those ecosystems between predator and prey, and I would say it's definitely valid that you'd see effects of having that apex predator in the system and not.
Yeah. This is making me like want to go back to science class and watch all those like National Geographic documentaries.
Yeah. I'm just going to be saying ungulates over and over now.
I know. It is a new word.
What's an ungulate is?
So deer and elk all belong to that family of ungulates. So hooved.
Okay.
How will this reintroduction of wolves affect Wisconsin terrain and wildlife, do you think?
So I'll preface this that I'm not a wolf expert by any means. And they weren't reintroduced. They basically migrated back into the state. And so I think in terms of ecology, it's definitely a beneficial thing to have, like we were just talking about, those predators as part of the system. There's a lot of research out there that shows that overabundance within deer herds in particular can have really negative effects on our forestry with overbrowsing impacts. We have a lot of issues with vehicle collisions and deer in the state. So helping to kind of balance populations is a good thing. As far as, how far will they make their way within the state? I think a lot of that, if there's a space, if there's prey, you'll find those animals, but a lot of it comes down to social tolerance and social carrying capacity for having these kinds of animals and apex predators on the landscape. I think in part that's why, coyotes have managed to do so well outside of the wolf range in urban areas. So in the Madison area and Milwaukee area, that's become the new apex predator in these urban systems because they kind of filled that void when wolves were removed from the landscape, and they'll maintain that in areas where wolves don't establish.
Because wolves are mostly still up in the Northwoods, right?
They come down to central Wisconsin. I think as far down as Adams County too. So they've made their way.
That's so.
How do you feel about the reintroduction of dire wolves?
Didn't they just genetically recreate one?
Yeah, they did, and I think they were using some Canis lupus or gray wolf DNA within it. I did see that published, and it's really cool to say we've done that for sure, and maybe it opens the door for other reintroductions. But I have to say, and this is just my opinion on it, there's a lot of existing endangered species that we have on the landscape that we could use those resources in terms of preservation of habitat that I think are equally, if not more important to invest our resources in, honestly.
What's a dire wolf? It sounds like a Game of Thrones.
It's literally from Game of Thrones. So yeah,
it's a prehistoric wolf, basically.
Yeah, but they want to recreate the mammoth and stuff, which is, I don't know. That's
they were
just what I've
talking
seen,
about doing
but-
that with passenger pigeons too, which was a bird that used to blacken the sky for miles that we hunted to extinction as well.
Let's bring dinosaurs back.
Is there a beneficial strategy to this, or they're just trying to see what they can do?
Opinion. I think part of it is just see, how far what can we do? I don't really see where dire wolves would necessarily fill a vacant niche. In a sense, there's gray wolves are already occupying that role in a sense. So, I don't know. I mean, it's cool that we know we can do something like that.
Yeah. But it does seem, the vibe I'm getting is we're kind of using these resources in a way in which, we could be using it for better stuff.
Yeah. In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of unique and interesting animals, do you have a favorite Wisconsin species or most unique Wisconsin species?
Oh, it's such a hard question to answer. And so I usually like to, if I'm asked that question, I like to bring up like an underdog, something that people don't think of. And so I find, you ever heard of the four-toed salamander?
No.
I think salamanders are fascinating. So as a kid, I had this book called The Salamander Room. And my first salamander I ever saw was when we moved up to Wisconsin here. And the four-toed salamander is unique in that it's one of our lungless salamander species. So it quite literally breathes through its skin. And they're unique in that they lay their eggs in sphagnum moss that overhangs the water. So they have a very unique habitat that they need. They'll lay their eggs in the sphagnum moss overhanging water. The female guards the eggs, which is also unique to salamanders. And then when they hatch, they'll drop down into the water. But they're this adorable little, 2 to not even 4 inch long salamander with a little white belly and black speckles all over the bottom. And I remember finding my first one as part of a survey I was working on. And it was just like finding a piece of gold. I was so excited. But they're just fascinating to me, salamanders are, because they just go unseen. And they're just these really interesting creatures that have super interesting life history characteristics. They go to these ponds in the woods every spring, lay eggs. They got to get out of there before the pond dries up. The eggs have to hatch and develop before that pond dries up, and then they spend the rest of their lives in the woods and under logs and underground. And I think that's so cool. And just because it's unseen, I'm like, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Are they all over Wisconsin?
Cool.
Yeah. We've got species of salamanders, a variety of species all throughout the state. Even in really, really urban areas. So in Milwaukee County, even we've got blue-spotted salamanders and tiger salamanders. So it's awesome to see.
I am curious because salamanders are one of those creatures a lot of people catch and maybe play with and let go. Is that okay? Like if you're catching frogs and salamanders, is there any like harm that can be done to the animals?
I mean, sure, you can. You should be aware of like what's on your hands. If you find one and you're handling it, like don't put a bunch of hand sanitizer on and then grab. Their skin is extremely permeable, right? They're breathing through it in most situations. So being aware of that and just them drying out is good. I have a hard time saying like, oh, don't touch anything. Don't pick up a salamander if you see it. Because like we were talking about at the start, like that, if that's your kid or you're a kid, like that might be a lifelong connection. Like, I remember finding that salamander in the window well or something like that. So I think just doing it responsibly and like, there's a lot of resources online and even volunteer projects that people are encouraged to sign up for and help collect data on, amphibians throughout the state, a variety of wildlife through citizen science. So I think it's encouraged, and there's a lot of resources out there on how to do it right so that you're not causing harm or disrupting processes or systems that are out there.
Well, I kind of want to get into like what you're doing right now. So what conservation projects are you currently involved in?
Well, right now, this time of year, we just got done with our prescribed burn season. So that's a big part of what we do, particularly in Waukesha County, where we manage a lot of oak woodlands and prairie. So we just wrapped up prescribed fire season, and now through the growing season, we focus a lot on invasive species control. In our parks, we've got about 40 different invasive plant species in particular that we manage. And all of that is part of habitat management and stewardship for wildlife that we know use our green spaces. So also during the summer, we're collecting a lot of data on wildlife in our parks with our volunteers. We train volunteers to go out and help us identify what species of birds, turtles, amphibians are utilizing our green spaces so that we can then manage the habitat properly for any species that we may find that are maybe rare, threatened, or endangered.
What are some of the endangered species in Wisconsin?
Well, right, olive is one of them, actually. Ornate box turtles are our endangered turtle species that we have. We've got several species of endangered birds. I think there's over 150 different listed species, so special concern, threatened, and endangered as well. But since we've been on the turtle focus, the ornate box turtles are endangered turtle, and their range is southwestern Wisconsin, lower Wisconsin River Valley, anywhere with sandier soils, so shortgrass prairies, which that ecosystem in and of itself is an endangered ecosystem throughout the Midwest. There's like 0.01% remaining of prairie and oak savanna in this state.
You spend a lot of time with Olive, I know. Are turtles anything like domesticated dogs or cats? Like, does she recognize you, you think?
She not me. She's like, this is that lady that comes and grabs me and takes me to weird places on road trips. But some of the other naturalists at Retzer, she'll come up and she notices when you come up to her enclosure, and I think she recognizes some of them. And I was reading a book of time and turtles, and this individual went to someone's house that ran a turtle rescue and rehabilitation center, and she wrote about how their tortoise literally came to the door and greeted them like a dog would. Very curious about what was going on, moved about it very slowly, but they are smart animals. They really are. So I do think she's kind of learned to recognize.
Yeah, she's waving to us.
She's like, I know.
She's like, oh, stop. Oh my God.
Okay, I'm kind of jumping around here, but I want to make sure I can't let you leave without talking about big cats. Because I'm fascinated. Because I grew up in like Sheboygan area, Random Lake, on a farm, and there's just always tall tales about seeing big cats, cougars, bobcats, and I think a lot of times are they down here? Like there are some in Wisconsin, right?
Big cats, so cougars. There's been transient animals that have moved through. We don't have a breeding population of mountain lions or cougars in Wisconsin. Noting that I think just recently, though, they did confirm for the first time in 100 years mountain lion kittens, so breeding mountain lions in the Upper Peninsula. So might not be far off from that happening in Wisconsin, but to date, what we know we've had have been just individuals that are dispersing, moving, looking for new territories. A couple of years ago, we even had one that was showing up on someone's ring door camera, I think in Brookfield or Menominee Falls.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, so they'll move through for sure, and you could encounter one further north, absolutely. But in terms of breeding populations, not yet. But like I said, with that was kind of an exciting discovery. Someone found mountain lion kittens on their private property up in the Upper Peninsula. But yeah,
so cute.
Yeah, until they grow up.
Yeah, except they can be dangerous, right? So what happens if you do see a big cat out there?
Yeah, I've never had a face-to-face encounter with a mountain lion. I've found when I've been doing some turtle work up in the UP, found fresh tracks on some of the turtle beaches that we've been collecting data on. So just as you would with the big cats in particular, the main thing if you came across one when you're hiking is just don't run. I mean, think of your house cat, right? You don't turn your back, you don't run. It might, it triggers this predator prey response. So just making sure you're face to face with it, you're making yourself appear bigger, and you're backing away from it.
If you sprayed it with a water bottle?
I don't know. Maybe bear spray would be better. So my closest encounter was actually backpacking out in Washington State. My husband and I were in Olympic National Park, and we were coming up to our spot. We had a permit to camp for the night. And I was seeing a lot of mountain lion scat on the trail, but it looked old. And then we pitched our tent, and I was still seeing a bunch of scat. And I actually saw just like your house cat on a scratching post. Sorry, Olive, I'm just like shaking her as I'm talking with my hands. That there was some scratching marks in nearby trees and logs. So I knew a mountain lion had been active in the area, and I didn't tell my husband this right away. And so we set up our tent, and we just kind of made a rule. It was like, okay, if anybody has to go to the bathroom at night, we'll just go together. So just being aware. And then that next morning, I got out of the tent, and there was, a warm, steaming pile of mountain lion scat right outside the tent. So at that point, I told him, I'm like, okay, so there's definitely a mountain lion that's in the area right now. And we were just aware of it. And there was the two of us. So it was just like, if you got to go off the trail to do something, we go together. Pause for Olive.
Olive is on the move today. She's really getting her steps
She's
in.
living on the edge of the couch, quite literally.
And then I guess bears. Have you seen?
I've seen a couple black bears. I actually was just driving through Johnson Creek the other day, and there has been like a black bear sighting, and I saw it going through a field because I was like, "What is that black thing?" I was on the phone with my dad as I was driving, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I just saw a black bear. He's like, yeah, there's been one in the area that people have been seeing.
Yeah.
But
they're continuing to move further south too. So we've got a lot of black bears in Wisconsin, but kind of similar to say wolves or mountain lions that you may see moving through further southern Wisconsin. A lot of them may end up being just transient individuals looking to establish new territory. But yeah, we can probably expect to see more of that as, you know, they start to saturate areas further and further south in the state. But I love seeing black bears.
Yeah, I normally only see them when I'm driving. I've seen, I think, 3 in my lifetime, but you haven't seen one, right?
I have
Andrea?
not seen one in Wisconsin. I've seen them in the Smokies, but
Okay.
in Wisconsin, I need to see a wolf, a bear, and an elk.
An elk. I don't think I've seen an elk. I've seen like albino deer, which are a little more rare, but
Yeah,
I have
do
seen a
wanna see an elk.
porcupine though.
porcupines
Really?
are adorable.
They're so cute.
where did you see one?
In Door County.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Have you
I'm
seen the
kind of scared.
porcupine
They
in
can
Wisconsin?
shoot stuff out, right?
Yeah.
They don't shoot, so that's actually a myth.
Is that a myth?
Yeah.
Okay,
so they
cartoons
can't shoot
failing me.
they don't. They don't shoot their quills, but they'll basically smack you with them, and they're quilled everywhere, but the belly. But yeah, so it's really if you got to come into contact with one
Gotcha.
to get those quills on you. But they're
So I'm not going to stand 5 feet away and one's just going to spring
no,
at me.
you're good. You're
Wait,
good.
what the heck? I feel like this isn't common knowledge.
No, I really think it's not common knowledge. Did you guys know this? Like,
I thought that, yeah. And next we're going to hear skunks don't actually spray. No, they do.
Oh, that's true.
I'm so scared of skunks, actually.
Oh, getting sprayed by a skunk?
Just in general of skunks, I think. They're kind of weird looking little guys.
They're cute.
I think
The baby skunks are really cute, but once you see them and don't they have like really sharp teeth?
They've got really nice claws for digging around and
That's what
digging
it
for
is.
grubs
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
This is like the badger debate all over again. Like,
Yeah. Well, my favorite, which I won't go too much into it because I talk about them too much, is I love opossums. Megan, why?
No.
I've only talked about
I've
opossums.
had a bad encounter with opossums.
I only talked about opossums one other time on the podcast, and I'm pretty sure it was edited out. But I love opossums because the babies, the moms carry the babies on the back. And I think that's so cute. And that's a bucket list item for me.
Well, I had one hiss
that's
at me in
adorable.
California, so bad
So
experience.
done on the bad list.
Yeah, on the bad list.
All right. Well, we're kind of out of time. I wonder if there's anything else, any last things we should.
I guess I kind of just want to talk about how to protect endangered species in Wisconsin, what people can do if they run into one. Do they need to report it somewhere?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I love the answer to this question because the great thing about it is you don't have to be a biologist. You don't have to have a ton of land that you own to be able to do things that benefit wildlife in the state, right? So one of the biggest things you can do is create habitat at home. I mean, even if you just have a balcony in the city and you can put some potted native plants out there for our local bumblebee populations, that's beneficial. So habitat loss is the leading driver of things becoming endangered. So preserving habitat while also managing it, so through the use of prescribed fire, invasive species control, those are all essential things for maintaining endangered populations of wildlife in the state. Reporting it and getting involved in citizen science is another big thing that people can do. So for turtles in particular, going throughout the month of June, they want to know where you're seeing turtles crossing the road, what types of turtles you're seeing. That helps us understand, you know, if there's certain roadways that are major problems for turtle populations, can anything be done? Can we construct eco passages or barriers to help ensure that these wildlife crossings are beneficial to where we're having problems on our roadways? And then also just, I'd say getting involved even with local land trusts or park systems like ours. We're always looking for volunteers to help us with stewarding habitat, collecting data on wildlife in the parks, and educating each other. So at the end of the day, if you don't have time to do anything or the resources to do anything, I think one of the most important things you can do is just be informed and, you know, support policy and programs and projects that help to preserve endangered species on the landscape, and that can go a long way, just informing yourself and using your voice.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And you mentioned Retzer. Is that somewhere like people can go to see animals? Can you kind of give an overview of what it is?
Absolutely. So Retzer Nature Center is part of the Waukesha County Park System right in Waukesha. It's open. It's free to the public. And we have several animal ambassadors there, like Olive and several other turtles and amphibians and fish. So you can come in and they've got a multitude of programs for adults and kids. So there's thousands of kids that come through Retzer every year to learn about everything ecology and wildlife and environment. So yeah, we welcome anyone to come out to Retzer.
Yeah, that's not too far from me. I'm gonna have to take a trip
Yeah,
over there.
come on out. We'll give you a
Yeah.
special tour.
Yeah, yes,
Amazing.
please.
And how can people follow you and kind of stay tuned into what you're doing?
Yeah, so Waukesha County Parks Conservation in the Parks website is a great place to kind of get involved with everything that we're doing and also just keep up to speed with what we're seeing and experiencing out in our parks. So we're on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, I think we're out of time, but that was amazing. I could talk to you about this forever.
And you
honestly.
can't see it, but Olive has a slight smile. Like
Yeah.
she's kind of smiling.
We'll have to
right
give
now.
her a close up at the end for
Oh,
the
yeah.
thumbnail.
You guys can
Yes.
give her some mealworms. She was
Like,
ready
she
for
has
her
like a
snack.
slight smile. She knows
yeah.
she did well. She knows
does.
she killed it.
I know she's like chilling now. She's
Yeah.
like, I'm not worried about it.
She really is. Look at her.
Oh, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. All right, Cabin listeners. Well, that is all we have for you today. If you didn't get the chance to look at Olive at all, please hop over to our YouTube channel if you're just listening because she's adorable. But don't forget to leave us a voicemail. Give us ideas for who you want to see on the cabin next. And we will see you next week, Monday on YouTube or Tuesday listening.
Bye. The Cabin Podcast is brought to you by the Wisconsin Counties Association. The WCA is the foremost voice of county officials representing all 72 counties in Wisconsin. Nearly every action taken by the executive and legislative branches of state government affects local government. Counties need to play a pivotal role in these actions, and the WCA is the organization through which dialogue and cooperation can occur. The WCA works diligently to provide services to our membership that allow them to serve their constituents in the most effective manner possible. Learn more at wicounties.org.
The Cabin is brought to you by Praise in the Pines. If you love Christian music, you don't want to miss Newsboys Live in Eagle River on Saturday, July 19th, 2025. Praise in the Pines is a Christian music festival filled with dynamic teaching, real-life testimonies, and the unifying power of worship. Bring your family, friends, or small group and experience the joy of revival. Plus, enjoy delicious offerings from local food vendors while connecting with a community of faith. Tickets are available now at praiseinthepines.org. Don't wait.
Today's episode of The Cabin was hosted by Andrea Belke and Megan Christian and produced by Andrea Belke. Audio engineering by Nick Cardarella and video teasers by Andrea Belke and Megan Christian with social media by Megan Christian. The Cabin is a production brought to you by Discover MediaWorks. To learn more, head to discovermediaworks.com. And don't forget to leave a review.